Hey, so welcome to another episode of the Soulful Side of Life with me, Ayo Portee. I hope that you're doing well and having a great week. I am excited about this podcast episode with Ayo, who's known as the Fashion Roadman. He was gracious to give me some of his time to talk about all things fashion. If you have been following the Fashion Roadman on YouTube and Instagram, you will know that Ayo paints a thorough picture of the fashion industry, whether that's the business of fashion or the history side of things, and why the brand is the way it is, because it's history. It's just fascinating, his breadth of knowledge. And I think this was a very well encompassed conversation about some of the current topics that are a buzz right now in fashion. So a little bit about Ayo. He started his career off in the fashion industry at the age of 17, working for Dr. Bernice Pan and her brand Deploy London. And he also studied journalism at Central St. Martin's, and he launched from scratch his YouTube channel, The Fashion Roadman, talking about business things within fashion and talking about creative directors. And today that channel has over 139,000 plus subscribers and over 8 million views, which shows how much people can draw upon his breadth of knowledge within the industry. Ayo has his own magazine called The Fashion Archive. He has worked for Business of Fashion, BOF, and he has contributed to Vogue and GQ as well as other publications. So in this episode, Ayo talks about how he started off in the fashion industry. He gives his advice to Black people and the things that we can keep in mind. It can be hard getting a seat at the table in fashion as a Black person, and we discuss that. He also talks about his thoughts for the September Fashion Month, which is bound to be a big one, especially in Milan and Paris. And he gives his thoughts on if he thinks Bezos is going to buy Condé Nast. So enjoy this podcast episode with the Fashion Roadman. You're going to love it. Ayo, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Okay, so jumping right in, how would you describe to a kindergartner what it is that you do?
I talk about fashion, if that was like the big summary. The longer summary is I analyze runway shows, I talk about fashion business, and I talk about fashion history on different platforms. So that's everything from writing articles as a journalist to making videos on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok.
Awesome. When you were a child, was fashion your thing?
Not in the way that it is now, but I definitely was always into fashion and like how I dressed and my style. But I would say in terms of like actually wanting to work in fashion and seeing fashion as a viable career and all that sort of stuff, that was maybe when I was 17.
Okay, and what sparked that? Like, did you have a friend or someone you walked into an atelier and you were like, this is awesome?
It's actually a really random story. I don't know how much time we have, but it's I was like doing this random summer job, and my aunt spoke to me because I was working in this like grocery store, and she was like, "Oh, I have a better job for you. You can do this like moving job where you move people's furniture from London to France, like Calais in France." I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting." It's a lot of like labor work, but I'm used to doing stuff like that, so it's fine.
Yeah.
So I took this job and I was moving this woman's furniture. So I'd like dismantle her beds, her fridges, like everything, put it in a massive truck, drive it to her house in Calais, and then offload it. So it's kind of like a moving company kind of situation. And this specific woman that I did the first job for, her name is Bernice Pan. She runs a brand called Deploy London. It's a sustainable women's wear brand in London, quite big, quite well known amongst the customer base is like lawyers and like women that are corporate, that kind of vibe. So as I was like putting her beds together and lifting her fridge, and she's like, yeah, put it over there. We were talking about fashion, and we just kept talking about fashion because I saw her face on a magazine And that's how I figured out she worked in fashion. I was like, oh, why is your face on the magazine? Do you work in fashion? It's like, yeah, I like run a fashion brand. So I was like, that's interesting. And then as I'm carrying her beds and stuff around, I'm like talking to her about fashion. And I think maybe she just found the conversation enjoyable or interesting. And she was like, you're a really interesting person. I would like to hire you as an intern for my brand. It was really random. So I quit my job that same day and then I started working for her. And then through her, I kind of learned everything that there is to learn about fashion. I did everything from pattern making to answering emails to getting her coffee to going to Savile Row to talking about. There was a time we were making like the naval officer's jacket. So we were in collaboration with the Savile Row tailor and I learned all about that. I don't even think I knew what Savile Row was before then. And like, it was crazy. And I'll go to like the zip suppliers and the button suppliers and realizing all that actually goes into the construction of a garment. And then I would host shows for the brand at the Saatchi Gallery in London. So I did all that stuff. And then that's when I realized that fashion could actually be a career and it's an actual job and it generates revenue and like all these different things. And that was what sparked my interest in terms of working in fashion. And all of this happened when I was 17, about to turn 18. So that was when my mind was changed.
Yeah, and you were young enough that you could, yeah, try and see what would
Yeah.
happen. Yeah, it's so interesting how when, okay, you had an interest in your own fashion, but you weren't thinking to have a job in it. And it's like you stumbled into it. And I stumbled into fashion as well because I got my undergrad in Washington, and my vision was to work at the White House and in Congress and do the whole DC thing. And I interned at the White House and in Congress, and I loved it. But then I went to London and got my master's. And I had a lot of friends who were studying at Central St. Martin's and other fashion schools. And I would go to their apartments and they would be, yeah, they'd have their sewing machines
Yeah.
and working on things. And I'm like, this is cool. Like I have a class in diplomacy and negotiations. How boring. And you're making cool jackets. But I never thought that I had a place in it. And it's when I went to Lebanon to live to help Syrian refugees, was going to stay for 1 month and stayed for 3 years and started contributing fashion for Harper's Bazaar Arabia, that I just fell in love with it. Do you feel that because you kind of came into fashion through an outside way, you maybe weren't reading Vogue as a teenager, that you're able to offer the industry like a different perspective or eye because you stumbled into it?
Yeah, definitely. I think like no offense to like most people I know in fashion, but I do think that I'm a bit more well-rounded than most people I meet in fashion because I came into it so late, so I had the space and time to be into other interests. So I'm into things, everything from basketball and football and Formula One to subcultures. Like when I was younger, I was like one of those jerking kids that would wear like skinny jeans and studded belts and shutter shades and
Yeah.
colorful flannels and stuff and dance on the street and join dance crews. I'm just into so many different things. And I think most fashion people that I meet are very fashion is my life. I've been into fashion since I was a kid and like all I know about is fashion. And it limits, like, for example, when Formula One became big in fashion, a lot of people didn't really see that because a lot of people in fashion are not into Formula One. Or when fashion became a big thing in football because footballers were trying to do tunnel walks the same way that they do in the NBA, most fashion people won't realize that because most fashion people don't watch football. So I think I definitely would say that I am more well-rounded than the average fashion person, and that's definitely because I came into it quite late.
Yeah, makes sense. Where did the name the Fashion Roadman come from?
Yeah, so that's so it's funny because I tell everyone a different story because it's just so long, so I tried to summarize it. But so roadman in London comes, it's like the slang for like a gangster, like someone that's like in the streets or like a gangster or something. And I always feel like if you're a black person like in a space like fashion that's like really elitist, most people are rich, most people are like European, it's very like as a black person you get pigeonholed or people have like certain misconceptions of you. So
Hmm.
I thought it would be absolutely hilarious to take something that is so stereotypical and flip it on its head because I'm very sure that when people see my name, like my Instagram name, they come in with like, yeah, this guy's going to sound like like he's from the streets and this guy is going to look like that. And then they hear me speak and it's like, oh. So it's kind of like I wanted to create like the ultimate contrast with the
I see.
name. That was like the main reason why I did it. And it's also funny hearing like fashion execs say Roadman and stuff is quite funny.
Yeah. So you really flipped it on its head, yeah.
So that's actually why I did it.
Gotcha. It was shocking news when the British Fashion Council decided not to hold the Men's Week this summer. Why do you think of the four major fashion weeks, London is struggling the most?
I think there's so many factors. I mean, one is just the fact that London has never really been the biggest market, and London designers always go to Paris eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Every season. London Fashion Week is always good every couple of seasons because what happens is, like, I remember the first time I went to Paris Fashion Week and it was designers like Paria Farzaneh and Kiko Kostadinov and A Cold War was just really coming up and like all these different brands. And all of them eventually went to Milan and Paris because bigger audience, bigger market. So that always happens. Then you need to wait for the next generation of like interesting designers to come through. And then what Brexit did is absolutely tank what was already slowly tanking anyway. Because with Brexit, what happened was paperwork is harder to come by for people, especially if you don't have like an EU passport or something like that. Because let's say you're coming outside a EU region. Before, when it was free travel, you could still go to London Fashion Week, then to Milan and Paris. Now there are extra complications because of the border in terms of like models coming to London, buyers coming to London, especially buyers that are not, once again, don't have European passports. Like if you're from Japan, you'll buy from Japan, which is a massive market. You'll buy from China, which is a huge market. These are massive markets for the UK. Before, if they got that Schengen visa, which is what they would get, or that or like a free travel visa within the EU, it was easier to come to the UK, but now there's more red tape in
Oh.
terms of entering the UK. So that to me is probably the main reason why we no longer have a big fashion week anymore. And that's why they thought it was a good idea to try and test just doing London Fashion Week in Paris.
Yeah, it's unfortunate though. The prime minister should do something about that to make it easier for the fashion industry because fashion weeks bring in a lot of money to cities and
Yeah,
London has produced or the UK has produced so many talented designers that it should stay in
yeah,
London. But
yeah.
that's unfortunate. Okay. So I see like an Isabella Blow or a Browns, like a Jay-Z doing A&R for artists. Can you break down and explain how the discovery of a McQueen or a Galliano out of fashion school would not happen in 2025? Like how, yeah.
So it can't happen because for so many reasons. So okay, first of all, in the 80s and in the 90s especially, because if we're talking 90s, that's like McQueen and Galliano era. The problem is that these luxury brands, most of them didn't have ready-to-wear collections then. Like Gucci started their ready-to-wear under Tom Ford in the 90s. They started Louis Vuitton started their ready-to-wear slightly later with Marc Jacobs. So a lot of these brands didn't have ready to wear. A lot of it was untapped. They didn't make close to the amount of revenue that all of them make now. So there was more scope to hire young designers or, unproven designers, so to speak, or designers that were making a buzz 2, 3 years out of school because it's like, well, our ready to wear business makes no money. So if we just insert them and make them like a ready to wear creative director, let's see what they can do type of thing. So there was so much scope. Now you could never do that because now Louis Vuitton makes more than 20 billion in revenue. So you can't trust some kid who's just left school to grow a company that's already making 20 billion in revenue to make more. So the landscape is completely different. That's why there's no scope or there's no space really for like young talent anymore, the way that there once was. So that's why it's harder to find a McQueen or it's harder to find a Galliano because the designers that come out now that have those kind of skills won't have the scope or the freedom to be creative directors. They have to work in the design team and work their way up.
Like a Pierre Palo.
Yeah.
I see. That's unfortunate that those were the good old days, I guess, when you could do that. Those stories are inspiring. It's an interesting time in fashion because brands are playing it safe with their creative director picks, like, Kering putting in creative directors that they've worked with before. They're not taking risks like putting a Matthew Williams into a Givenchy streetwear. And money is tight. And I think it's going to be this way for a while until these international conflicts find
Yeah.
solutions. Why are fashion conglomerates playing it safe? Like, how does that affect what's happening politically in the world?
Yeah, I think it's to do with what I mentioned earlier. It's to do with the fact they have to play it safe now because they're kind of so I feel like luxury brands are prisoners of their own success,
Mm,
where they are so successful and they make so much money. It's like how much market share is left.
mm, mm.
Because before it was easy to grow so quickly, it's from like 100 million to 500 million to 1 billion to 2 billion, all the way to 20 billion to 30. But now it's like everyone knows about your brand, but
Mhm.
not everyone can afford it anyway. So it's not like everyone in the world could be your customer. How much more market share is left to capture before you actually exhaust the entire planet? So
I see.
because of that, you can only really go with a creative director that is at that point like a celebrity. It's why people like Pharrell Williams are being hired. It's why
Mm.
Kering will hire Demna at Gucci because he's such a big name. They can't put someone that's unknown at Gucci. They tried it with Sabato De Sarno and it clearly didn't work. So
Mm.
even they've realized, yeah, it just doesn't work because we're prisoners of our own success. So they've kind of cornered themselves and they have nowhere to go but to do that. And I don't think that will change anytime soon.
I see. Moving on to September, everyone's saying it's going to be a big fashion season, I think especially in Paris. What are your thoughts on September?
Yeah, I think September is going to be like a changing of the guard as far as designers go because there are so many debut collections, like so many.
Yes.
It's actually quite crazy. At Milan, like you have like Simone Bellotti at Gil Sander and like Luis Trotta at Bottega Veneta. You have debut at Loewe. You have Pio Paolo at Balenciaga. There's so many of them.
Dior,
So yeah, Dior, JW Anderson doing his first women's wear collection. You
Glenn
even have
Martin's.
Glenn Martin's first ready-to-wear show at Margiela. So there's so many
Yeah.
debuts. It feels like a big changing of the guard in fashion. And it's kind of refreshing in a way for the new talent that's being allowed to come through. People like Luis Trotta, those kind of people. I like to see Simone Bellotti at Gil Sana. I'm really looking forward to that. I think he did a great job at Bali. So that should be interesting. So yeah, it's going to be insane. There's so many brands that they're going to have a new vision. I think people are really looking forward to seeing what this next wave of fashion will look like. So yeah, it's going to be huge. I think there's a lot of anticipation for it.
Do you think it will be a new vision because these execs are putting in safe choices? I'm feeling like it's not going to be like a Galliano excitement of style.
Yeah. I think
The
so.
same old is what I'm feeling.
Yeah, I think business people in general do lack an ability to understand creativity because if you think what was the most viral runway show in recent times, it was Galliano's show at Margiela, which was extremely creative.
Hmm.
So business people think in their mind that our black jackets sell, so if you just keep selling black jackets, we'll make more money. When in reality, people are just tired of that, and if you did what Galliano did, which is something completely different to what we see in fashion these days. You stand out like a sore thumb, and actually you end up selling more because of it. So I think a lot of these execs just have it backwards. And I think some of them are even learning that their ways aren't working. I mean, every brand has been having issues. Kering
Hmm.
has had a CEO restructuring. Their C-suite has been restructured completely. Burberry fired their old CEO and hired a new CEO. So I think all of them are understanding that, yeah, we don't know what we're doing. So we need to lean onto the creativity of a lot of these creative directors and see what they do. So I'm hoping that they don't stifle the creativity of these designers because why hire them?
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. So I'm intrigued to see what Pier Paolo's gonna do. The very first article I wrote for Forbes on a Valentino collection, he emailed me. I don't know how he got my email. I don't know if it's in some company database, but it shows his heart. Like he's such a nice person.
He is.
And I think there's a lot of nice creative directors like Paul Smith and Albert Elbaz before he died, and Elie Saab. These men are just amazing. Anyways, I wonder though, because Balenciaga is known for its avant-garde designs and shapes, and Pier Paolo is romanticism and very feminine and bold colors. That pink show, I was there with it and it was
Yeah.
amazing. I just wonder though if he's going to match well with Balenciaga. I'm intrigued.
That's the thing because Demna has really accelerated the growth of Balenciaga, and
Yeah.
it's through a very specific aesthetic. Like Demna,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Demna at this point, he has like a cult because the people that love his Balenciaga, they wear it head to toe, and their whole life revolves around that aesthetic. Is quite insane. Like I know people that started riding motorcycles because Balenciaga had a collaboration with Alpine Stars. So it's like, yeah, we're gonna ride motorcycles now. It's like crazy. It's like their whole personality, and I just don't know how Pio Paolo can keep those people and
Yeah.
grow the brand further at the same time. I just don't see that happening.
Maybe he's going to bring in his own kind of guard
Yeah.
that I think things are going to change a little bit with Balenciaga in
Yeah.
terms of the consumer base and yeah.
Yeah, I can't see Pio Paolo doing grunge and stuff like that.
No,
That's not his style.
no. He may try, but I think you're gonna on the runway. It's going to be very romantic looks, and
Yeah.
yeah, the consumer base will change. I've always wondered because I lived in Lebanon for 3 years, and there's so many talented couture designers. Why these company heads have not hired a Lebanese creative director? Is it because they only want Europeans?
I don't think it's necessarily that they only want Europeans. I think it's that they're such in a state, they need people with a track record of selling loads of garments and making loads of money.
Mm.
So like if you notice the people that they do hire, like if you think of like the biggest designers now, it's because they sell like JW Anderson or Eddie Slimane, who like rose Celine to like big figures, or like even Virgil Abloh, who they hired him because he was making so much money with Off-White. So that's why they hire designers. And I think there's a lot of talent, but unfortunately, this talent isn't nurtured in a commercial way because I mean, you need like resources to build your infrastructure to where you have 50, 100 retailers worldwide. But
Mm.
that's the reason why they probably don't hire designers from places like Lebanon, even though I know that there are loads of Lebanese designers that are sensational, like really, really good.
Yeah. When should, like, of course, I'm just giving an example. When should someone like an Elie Saab or a Zuhair Murad, who have very well established fashion houses, consider leaving for a bit to go work for a Dior or a Valentino?
Yeah, I don't
Or
I
should
don't
they not
know
consider it?
because I don't know if that's what they want to do.
Right,
Because,
right.
like, for example, when I think of Elie Saab's work, would Elie Saab want to make Dior tote bags and like design Dior tote bags? As a designer, will that bring fulfillment?
Mm,
So that's the thing. A lot of designers
mm,
don't want to be part of the commercial rat race that is being a creative director of one of these big brands. And
hmm.
also the stress that comes with it and the fact you have to, design a billion collections a year.
But I
Obviously,
think
I'm
he's already doing
exaggerating, but
that.
yeah.
I think he's already doing that, like creating his young son, who's the CEO, is trying to move the company in that direction
Yeah,
of
yeah.
creating accessories. I guess, yeah, I've just always wondered, like, when you already have your own fashion house, does it make any sense to leave it and go work for a European brand if you were offered such a thing, or is it wiser to just stay with your own thing?
I think it just depends on your circumstance.
I see.
So, like JW Anderson probably feels like working at Dior will bring
Hmm.
in revenue that he can reinvest back into his namesake label. That's what McQueen did himself. That's what Virgil Abloh probably did. So I think it just depends on how you see it. The
Hmm.
only problem with it is that your workload is just through the roof
Yeah.
designing at those two houses. I don't know how any designer does it. I don't know how Virgil Abloh did it. I don't know how JW Anderson is going to do it. I don't know how Karl Lagerfeld did it, but yeah,
They've got
it's
those
crazy.
teams and they must have a system down of plugging into one brand during one time and then okay, yeah, moving on to the other things. Yeah, but it's got to be hard. Like I don't know how just even one designer creates 60 looks 4 times a year or 2 times a year. It's insane.
Yeah.
Okay, in addition to it being a challenging time with brands, it's a difficult time for fashion contributors. And I remember in your earlier videos that you have for your YouTube channel, you wanted to be like a contributor or a journalist at one of the big publications. Would you say that that is your aim today in 2025? And what advice would you have for somebody who wants to be a journalist at one of these bigger publications?
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I was younger, I thought that, so I wanted to write for a big publication because I thought that there was a credibility that came with writing for like these big fashion publications. But I think now that I'm older and I've worked at some of these publications, I'm now in a space where I don't want to work for them because I feel like for example, when I used to work at Vogue, because as we know, Vogue has sponsors. A lot of brands advertise in Vogue, so you can't really say what you want to say. You can't be as authentic as you would like because Vogue is beholden to these advertisers, which means you kind of turn into a cheerleader.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a journalist and I'm a someone that has opinions about things. And I think it reduces my like journalistic integrity if I become like a cheerleader, which is why I realized maybe working in fashion in the sense of working for these big publications is not for me because I don't personally want to do that. So I think as a journalist, it just really depends on your goal.
Mm.
Just because you can't say bad things about brands doesn't necessarily mean you can't grow as a writer
Mm-hmm.
working for those companies, or there won't be interesting stories. You'll do interviews that'll be really interesting. You'll do profiles on designers, you'll interview designers and you'll learn so much about their work and stuff. So there's like pros and cons, to be honest. And in terms of advice, I would just say be proactive.
Mm.
I worked at BOF because I was proactive. So what happened actually, how I worked at BOF was I randomly got the email to one of the editors at BOF called Brian Baskin. And at the time, I wanted to pitch him a story about how Discord is becoming like a leading platform where fashion communities are forming. This was when it was first a thing. This is when like there was a big Rick Owens Discord that all the Rick Owens nerds and geeks would just geek out about Rick Owens and stuff on Discord. And Discord is a platform that started as like a gaming chat room type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
When it was then fashion people started to adopt it. And immediately I saw that I was like, this is such a good story. So I pitched it to Brian, and I think it was just too early because I need to also remember I'm Gen Z. So like I will see things that maybe like someone that's a lot older than me won't or won't understand. So that's probably why he didn't understand it. He was like, I don't really get it. So it's like thanks for the pitch, but I don't really get it. And it kind of just ended there. And a year later, someone within the BOF team pitched the story that I pitched the year prior. So he emailed me and he was like, so someone from my team has just pitched the story that you pitched last year, and I actually remember you pitching it. So I want both of you to work on the story, which is nice of him because he didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And then when a job came up at BOF, I applied for it. And obviously there's like you go through the process, you go through the interviews, but I definitely think that me being proactive enough to email him and pitch him something and him also realizing, oh, this guy actually knows what's going on, to the point where I didn't even understand what he was trying to pitch till a year later. We want like a journalist here that will see things that I can't even see. So I think all of that stuff kind of was the reason why I ended up working there, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I think if you're proactive, even when you get a no, like I did, because it's not like the pitch went anywhere, but a year later something came of it. So I think being proactive as a journalist is the most important thing. And that is part of the job. Even when you then work for these magazines, you have to chase people constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Every journalist knows most of your work is just chasing people for interviews, chasing people for times, for meeting dates. That's kind of what it is. So if you're not proactive, you really couldn't even be a good journalist in the first place.
That's true. What are your thoughts for the future of fashion journalism? And what I mean is I've got a couple of friends in PR that I've spoken to recently, and the fall there's a lot of events coming up, Venice Film Festival, Fashion Weeks, and they're quite frustrated because these publications, if you're not advertising now, they don't want to cover your event. They're not getting responses back from journalists, and I think it's because journalists are being stretched thin at these media houses. A lot have been let go with media layoffs, so that's a challenge. They're not working with freelancers that much anymore, these publications. So the way I see it is that the future is independent journalists who are starting their own Substacks and podcasts and YouTube channels. And it may be hard for brands to consider working with independent journalists because they want the Vogue coverage, Harper's Bazaar. What are your thoughts? I see it moving more into independent journalists. What you've been doing the last few years, people needing to work with you, or do you think it's always going to be Vogue getting everything?
Yeah, I think so. These publications still have power because they've just built these relationships over the course of years. It's a normal business thing, right? It's like if I am an eyewear brand, I can't make the same money even if I have better ideas than an eyewear brand that has 1,000 retail partnerships baked in. So if they started a new brand, if that same brand started a new brand at the same time as mine, they would just tap into their network from their old brand and just be like, we already stock with our brand and it's successful. Here's a new brand. It's probably going to work well. We have a track record. Stock this new brand. And they just can be in 1,000 retailers where I would be struggling. So it's the same thing in fashion. It's like they have all the relationships. They kind of have those email. They have the track record. So it's very hard to compete with them. However, I do think that consumers are starting to feel like magazines are inauthentic because in a way they are, because there's so much, advertising influence that they can't really say anything critical about any brand. So it just feels like you're reading an ad a lot of times. So I think it's more authentic. I think the biggest thing is Substack. I think for journalists, that's going to be the main thing moving forward. I think Substacks are becoming huge. And there are certain journalists that have enormous Substacks, like Dana Thomas or Amy Adele. And I think they've created a framework for journalists to follow. Also, content creators like me, you know, doing things on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, that's also the future. And I think it's a more authentic way of, taking in fashion because people are sharing their actual opinions, not controlled by brands or, not, you know, brands saying if you we're going to remove 50,000 from our advertising budget with you if you say this because they don't have advertising budgets with content creators anyway. So they're not beholden to the same thing. So I think it's slowly going to move towards the authentic journalism on Substack and on social media and stuff, but it's slow because these companies and these legacy magazines, they have all the connections and they have all the relationships, and it's just very hard to just override that overnight.
Yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Two last questions. As we know, it can be challenging as Black people to make it or have a footing in this fashion industry. Do you have any thoughts or advice for Black people who are trying to find their path in fashion, no matter what area they're in?
Yeah. Oh, this is gonna sound really bad, but I think you kind of have to work harder than your
Mm,
contemporaries, which is a
we've been hearing
shame.
that since we were children. We have
I
to
know
work
my mum used to
harder.
tell me that as a kid,
My
but it's
my aunt and
true
uncle, and I would be like, "What do you mean by that? I have to work harder than white people." But now I get, get it.
because it's like okay, I'll put it this way. When I decided I wanted to be a journalist, I looked at the landscape of fashion journalism and I was like, okay, what magazine could I work at? What's the biggest fashion magazine in the UK? British Vogue. I looked at British Vogue. The editor-in-chief was Alexander Schulman, and everyone on her team was white. So obviously, there's no space for someone like me, very clearly. So I was like, well, how do I build my name in fashion journalism when I know that I'm not going to get hired by a magazine because I mean, look at who they're hiring. So that's why I started my YouTube channel, I was literally one of the first people to start analyzing fashion in a way that I did on YouTube when I did it, because I was just like, well, I watch YouTubers, why can't I just make content on YouTube that's just kind of what I would do if I was a journalist? So that's why I started my YouTube channel, and that was how I was able to build my name in fashion, and that's what then got my foot in the door in the industry, and that's how I ended up writing for these legacy magazines. So you kind of do have to work harder, because on the other hand, I don't think a lot of the people that were on the British Vogue team had to go all the way around to enter the industry the way I had to do it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
technically, yeah, if you're black, unfortunately, you have to find creative ways of entering the industry, because we do need to remember this is the West, a European elitist centric industry.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality, unfortunately. So my best advice would be find creative ways to enter the industry. And there are many people I see doing like really interesting things, but that would be my best advice.
Yeah. There's no other way, I think. There's no other way. It does make it fun because you learn how to be resourceful
Yeah.
and then think in creative ways to find a seat at the
Yeah,
table.
I think it will get better with time. So I think that the more like people like me have a foot in the door, because then I bring other people in. And I'm not bringing people based on a race, I'm bringing people based on merit. But what the thing about creativity that people don't understand, like people complain about fashion being boring, fashion being stale, we need to go back to the 90s, where are all the good ideas, all this sort of stuff. But you need to remember that one of the reasons why fashion seems stale right now is because when you package the same like upper to middle class like European people that come from the same background, that have the same references, their parents talked about the same artists, they all are into the exact same thing. So it's not possible for them to come up with anything remotely new in that
Mm.
framework. But then when you bring someone who is from Lebanon, they have a totally different framework, totally different set of artists that they heard about growing up, totally different set of like musicians that they're into, totally different set of like the way that they dress or the way that they think about fashion, because maybe their cultural dress is very different to European fashion. And when you
Mhm.
have that melting pot of different cultures and ideas and visions, that's what creates new things. And I find it weird that people don't understand that. So that's why I think it's very important for fashion to be diverse. It's not to do with tick box exercise. Yeah, let's get a woman here, let's get a black woman here, an Asian woman. You actually realize when you have people from different perspectives and different walks of life,
Mhm.
creativity is actually better. So
Yeah.
if you want a strong creative team, you need to bring people together that think differently. If you
Mhm.
bring 10 white people that grew up in Notting Hill, there's no creativity that's happening in that room. Everyone's
Exactly.
going to think the same. So I think it will improve with time. I think brands are starting to realize that a bit more based on the hires that they're doing, even though that's still, it it leaves a lot to be seen. So yeah, I think that's improving. But for now, I definitely would say, yeah, if you're black, you need to find more creative ways of like entering the space.
Yeah, for sure. Last question. Do you think Bezos is gonna buy Condé Nast?
I've heard a lot of people talking about this. I think so. I think the fact that Vogue has been covering him so much, and he was on like the cover story, and they covered his wedding, and they're saying that Lauren Sanchez Bezos like is interested in like being involved with Vogue. So I think it's possible, and we definitely know he can afford it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Money definitely isn't an issue with him. So I think it's definitely on the cards. I heard a rumor that he was actually in negotiation with them. Whether that's true or not, I cannot verify that.
Sure.
So please don't take that as fact, but that's something I heard.
Yeah.
So it would be interesting. I think that would be the final nail in the coffin for Vogue if that happened, because I mean,
What
what does
do you
Jeff
mean?
Bezos know about fashion
Fashion.
realistically?
Do you think
Yeah.
that Lauren Sanchez knows some good
So,
bits to
so I
be?
don't know, because I don't know a lot about Lauren Sanchez other than I know about her career. Like when she was younger, she was like really well known, and like she was a socialite and stuff.
And she's a journalist.
Yeah, she is. She is.
Good.
So I don't know to what extent she's like embedded into the fashion world and like she knows about fashion. I have no idea. But like to be, let's say, an editor at Vogue, you're supposed to know quite a lot about fashion,
Yeah.
like about history, contemporary fashion. Like you're supposed to know about pop culture too, like what's going on in music, what's going on in the art world, what's going on in fashion. Does Lauren Sanchez give me the vibes that she's that person? Not necessarily, but then once again, I don't know her personally, so I
Yeah.
can't say for sure or for certain.
Maybe editor
Um,
at large. She'd have
yeah,
some kind of, yeah. Or they'll create some kind of title for her where she'll have a lot of say,
yeah,
but she's not maybe going to be the editor in chief. Because I mean, it's hard when I stumbled into fashion. I'm a history major, so I can tell you things about the British Empire or
yeah,
how the American Civil War started, but I've had to learn as I go. And thank God for channels like Understitch, which really gives
yeah. I
me
love
the
Understitch.
historical context of these brands and Susie Menkes and her mind. But I wouldn't be fitting to be editor in chief of a Vogue because I don't have that
Fashion,
foundation,
yeah,
fashion
foundation, yeah.
foundation. Yeah. And that's
And
what's
that's what
needed.
I mean. Like, if you're going to be an editor in chief of like Vogue, especially American Vogue, which is like the most important one, you have to know about fashion. Like Anna Wintour knows about fashion.
Yeah.
You can't be editor in chief of like a big publication like that and not.
But
I
didn't
don't.
Anna learn as she went?
She did, but
Because,
because she's been in it for so long,
yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
even Anna has had like I don't expect Anna to know who like there's some big, let's say, designers that are buzzing in London right now, like really amazing designers like Yaku Stapleton or Charlie Constantinu.
Hmm.
Like these are some like up and coming designers that I think in like the next 2 to 3 years will be like names that people know in fashion, but now maybe not too many people know about them. I don't expect Anna Wintour to know these kind of designers because she's not on the ground like that.
Mm-hmm.
She will have someone who is like a version of me, but at Vogue that will tell her, oh, check out this designer, check out that designer. But at the same time, she still knows about fashion because she's been in it for longer. She was at Vogue for longer than I've been on this planet,
Yeah. Didn't
for
she
longer
come
than I've
in
been
like
alive.
85 or no, 87 or
Yeah.
something? So
Yeah.
it's been like 38, 39 years. Wow, so that's a long time to learn as you go. And she probably was feeling rather confident in her fashion foundation 5 to 10 years
Yeah.
in.
And so
But you
going
do
from
learn
someone
as,
like that
yeah,
to like a Lauren Sanchez Bezos is like,
yeah.
yeah,
And Lauren's already in her 50s or so.
yeah.
So that makes a difference, unless she's gonna get a intensive training course on,
Fashion boot camp.
yeah. Well, she needs you there, teaching her some things because you're very knowledgeable. And
I
she
mean,
probably would
I'm
welcome you.
luckily for me, I studied fashion journalism at fashion school. So like
Right.
we did fashion history models at when I studied fashion journalism at Sensei Martin. So I did it academically, which is why I know a lot about fashion history, but I think you can learn as you go though. You can, especially if you have people around you that studied it more academically and can just like point different things to you or suggest books to read and stuff. But it's also like, does she have time to do that? Like, I read a fashion book every single day. Does
Mm,
Lauren Sanchez Bezos have time to like read fashion books all the
maybe.
time?
Well, I think the larger question is someone like her interested in it
Right.
enough? Because when you're passionate about it, you make time. I know that she does a lot of other foundation type stuff with
That's the
Bezos
thing.
and is going to help him steward his wealth, and that's a whole nother job in and of itself. So yeah, it depends, but it's intriguing. And, Condé Nast doesn't have any head of content set for any of their titles. So I think
Yeah,
they're, positioning it for sale, and who comes in, who buys it, it will shape the fashion industry, no doubt.
definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, fashion is changing. Well, it always does, but I hope that though it changes in a way that there'll be some more minorities at the table. That's what I would love to see.
Yeah,
Um,
for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, but yeah, thank you so much for your time. I think it's been a cool chat.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, I agree.